Hello everyone, it's Mafalda and welcome back to a new vlog. And in this vlog, I'm actually going to be trying some poetry. I think if I went to my Goodreads shelves, I would realize that I've maybe read like 2 poetry collections in my whole life, which is a real shame, I feel like. Every time I'm asked if I like poetry, I never really know what to answer because, like I said, I've only read maybe like 2 or 3 poetry books. So I want to change that and I want to try some poetry. And I actually had this idea a few months ago, but I thought that February would be the perfect month to do this in because, you know, it's the month of Valentine's Day and it just makes sense to read poetry this month. I don't know, in my head it does. And so because I'm very inexperienced in the poetry genre, I went out looking for some suggestions of poets and of poetry collections that are highly acclaimed, and I found some very interesting books. I actually have 4 books that I want to read during this week, and one author that would always show up on my searches would be Mary Oliver, and I have seen her books everywhere. She's really famous and she has a really long backlist of books, a lot of books that Mary Oliver has published in her lifetime. And I ended up picking this one up, Felicity by Mary Oliver. I think this was published in 2014, and I don't know, I saw someone on Bookstagram that I follow post about this book, and I was already in the search for a Mary Oliver book and it was really hard to just pick one. And so I saw someone post about it, so I was like, let me just get this one. I like the cover, and I don't know, maybe I'll like it. And the back of the book says, our most delicate chronicler of physical landscape, Oliver has described her work as loving the world. With Felicity, she examines what it means to love another person. She opens our eyes against to the territory within our own hearts, to the wild and to the quiet. In these poems, she describes with joy the strangeness and wonder of human connection. So honestly, it sounds amazing. So yeah, excited to read this one and to finally read some Mary Oliver, because from my searches online, she would always show up as like the best poet and the best poetry books. So yeah, very excited about this one. And another book that would always show up on my searches online about best poetry collections and authors was Bright Dead Things by Ada Limon. And this one I also had already written down somewhere because I saw Nicole from A Cup of Nicole here on YouTube talk about it in one of her videos, and she mentioned really great things about this poetry collection. So when it was time to get poetry books for this video idea that I had, I knew this would certainly be one that I would like to try. And I've actually already flipped through some pages in this book because this one I've had the longest in my collection, and I don't know, I just feel like I'm going to love it, so I'm really excited about this one. And it says, in Bright Dead Things, Ada Limon considers how we build our identities out of place and human contact. Her poems trace in intimate detail the various ways the speaker's sense of self both shifts and perseveres as she moves from New York City to rural Kentucky, loses a dead parent, ages past the capriciousness of youth, and falls in love. Yeah, I'm just really excited to try this one. Finally, Bright Dead Things by Ada Limon will be my second book. Now, another book that I found online a lot and the cover really intrigued me is Magical Negro by Morgan Parker, and you can't really tell, but it has like these lines all across the book, and the texture of this is great. But yeah, really intrigued about this one. I feel like this is mostly poetry about the Black experience and just being Black in America, I'm guessing. Really interested in this one because, you know, these two are really more about nature and human connection and love, and I wanted something a little bit different and more diverse, so I found this one and I am really interested in reading it. And I think this was either nominated or actually won the Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Poetry Book of 2019, and I actually went through that category for a number of years just to see the books that would show up. And I know Goodreads Choice Award isn't the best like indicator of a good book, but I was kind of like starting at zero with poetry, and I didn't really know where to look, so I went there, and yeah, I found this book, so really interested in reading this one. And Magical Negro is an archive of Black everydayness, a catalog of contemporary folk heroes, an ethnography of ancestral grief, and an inventory of figureheads, idioms, and customs. These poems are both elegy and jive, joke and declaration, songs of congregation and self-conception. They connect themes of loneliness, displacement, grief, ancestral trauma, and objectification while exploring and troubling tropes and stereotypes of Black Americans. So this is a very different kind of book from these two, so that's why I also decided to pick this one up. And then this one, I honestly, like, I saw someone that I know and trust from YouTube talk about this poetry collection, but I don't remember who it was, and I kind of like, I can't even like picture the video. I just remember I saw this in a YouTube video from someone I'm subscribed to, and they were talking a lot of great things about this one, and I just heard them talk about it and instantly went online and grabbed a copy for myself, because this one explores a lot about disability and trauma and just really hard things. And so yeah, I kind of wish I knew who mentioned this book online, because I wanted to give them credit. But anyway, this is Please Do Not Touch the Exhibit by Jen Campbell, and this is a very short one, like compared to the other three, like this one is tiny. And like I said, this book deals a lot with disability because the author is disabled, and it also deals a lot with like circus and like storytelling and fairy tales and all of that. So I thought it was an interesting mix, and also from all of the searches that I did online, I never found this book in any of my searches. And the back of the book says, Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit explores disability storytelling and the process of mythologizing trauma. Jen Campbell writes of Victorian circus and folklore, deep seas and dark forests, discussing her own relationship with hospitals, both as a disabled person and as an adult reflecting on childhood while going through IVF. I'm really excited about all of these 4 books that I'm gonna be reading this week. I don't know which one I'm gonna start with, but I feel like I'm going to start with the one that I've had the longest, and it is Bright Dead Things. And then we'll see where I go from there. But yeah, I'm gonna be reading these poetry books over the next probably couple of weeks, because I'm reading other things at the moment. And then I'll tell you my thoughts, because I've never really dived into poetry, so I don't really have a concrete opinion about it. But hopefully after reading these 4 books, I'm going to have more of a saying if I like poetry or not.
Several days later.
So I've been meaning to update for this vlog for multiple days now, but I keep forgetting. I don't know why, but I have already finished the first book in this little poetry excursion, and I liked it. I think I'm giving it a 4-star. I feel like going into it, I was expecting to resonate with the poems a little bit more and to be like emotionally impacted by the poems a little bit more as well. But there were some poems that I dog-eared the page that I really liked. For example, We Are Surprised, then also Glow. I think that was probably my favorite one. Also The Problem with Travel and The Conditional, and some other poems that I liked along the way. And this book explores a lot of different poem structures, I guess, and has some poems that are more like a typical poem, I guess. So it rhymes and it has a kind of like rhythm to it, but then there are also some other I don't know if you consider them poems, but just some writing that is a little bit more like this one, more like prose than poems. But since it is in a poetry collection and it does still have some sort of like rhythm to it. I don't know if you would consider them poems or not. Yeah, like these two pages, for example, as well. And I did tend to gravitate more towards like liking the poems that had more of a like a normal structure, I guess you could say. I don't know if it's just because I'm not really used to poems that aren't following the typical structure of a poem. So I don't know if it's just because I'm very inexperienced when it comes to poetry, but yeah, those were the ones that I liked best. I guess this book kind of defied, because of all of these structural things, I think it kind of defied the idea of a poetry book that I had in my head, which made me think a lot about what can be considered poetry and what can't, I guess, or if there is such a thing, if not considering something poetry, if it doesn't follow the usual poem structure. So it did make me think a lot about that, and I did enjoy some poems, but there wasn't like a poem that just like instantly stood out to me and that I was just like completely in love with, I guess. And I don't know, I was maybe expecting that to happen a little bit more, but maybe, I don't know, this poetry collection isn't for me. I will definitely check out more of Ada Limon's work, because I think she has a way with words, because there were so many words that she used in her poetry that I was just like, I know what that word is, but I never really hear it, and I never really read it in a book. And the words she uses just feel very intentional, and the imagery that she creates with using these really like out of the box and complex words just really work well. So yeah, I liked it. For example, I'm gonna try and find a short poem that I liked so I can read it to you. I think I'm gonna read The Conditional, so you get an idea of what this poetry book is like and if it is for you or not. So I'm gonna read The Conditional. Say tomorrow doesn't come, say the moon becomes an icy pit, say the sweet gum tree is petrified, say the sun's a foul black tire fire, say the owl's eyes are pinpricks, say the raccoon's a hot tar stain, say the shirt's plastic ditch litter, say the kitchen's a cow corpse, say we never get to see it, bright future struck like a bum star, never coming close, never dazzling, say we never meet her, never him, say we spend our last moments staring at each other, hands knotted together, clutching the dog, watching the sky burn, say it doesn't matter, say that would be enough, say you still want this, us alive right here, feeling lucky. This was probably one of my favorites, and I just love the, like I said, the imagery that she creates in this. The owl's eyes are pinpricks, the sun's a foul black tire fire. Like, it's so specific, but it works. So yeah, I guess that was my experience with Bright Dead Things. And now I'm gonna move on to Felicity by Mary Oliver, and I'm excited to read this one because, like I said before, Mary Oliver is a very celebrated poet, so I'm interested in seeing if her poetry is for me or not. So I think I'm gonna read it now because I have a few hours to read, and I think this will be a quick one. And yeah, I'm just really interested in knowing if I like Mary Oliver's poetry. So yeah, let's give it a go. So I finished Felicity by Mary Oliver, and I think I did enjoy this one a little bit more than Bright Dead Things because I liked Ada Limon's writing a little bit more than Mary Oliver's, but at the same time I liked this one a little bit more because there were more poems that I enjoyed reading and that I resonated with a little bit more. So I tabbed a whole bunch. I don't know if you can really tell. There were a lot of poems that I reread multiple times because I really did enjoy them. And also in terms of structure, since I talked about that with Bright Dead Things, this one definitely had more of a poetry structure all throughout all of the poems. And I don't know if it's because it's just what I think about when I think of a poem, but I feel like I like poems that are a little bit more structured. But anyways, the poems that I enjoyed and that I tabbed were Moments, also Nothing is Too Small Not to Be Wondered About, also Humility, This Morning, I Know Someone, and also That Little Beast. And the one that I thought of reading to you was Nothing is Too Small Not to Be Wondered About, which I think kind of summarizes this book a lot, because I feel like the two main, I guess, subjects of this book were love and also nature, and this one is very nature focused. So the cricket doesn't wonder if there's a heaven or if there's room for him. It's fall, romance is over, still he sings. If he can, he enters a house through the tiniest crack under the door. Then the house grows colder. He sings slower and slower than nothing. This must mean something, I don't know what, but certainly it doesn't mean he hasn't been an excellent cricket all his life. There were also a lot of poems about love that I really enjoyed. For example, I Know Someone. I'm also going to read that one because I really like it. I know someone who kisses the way a flower opens, but more rapidly. Flowers are sweet, they have a short, beatific life, they offer much pleasure. There is nothing in the world that can be said against them. Sad, isn't it, that all they can kiss is the air? Yes, yes, we are the lucky ones. I will definitely check out more of Mary Oliver's backlist because I know she has a really big catalog, and it's the same as Ada Limon. I feel like maybe I did enjoy this book, but maybe there is a Mary Oliver out there that is more suited towards me even more than this one. And same with Ada Limon. I feel like I really liked some of her poems, and the way she writes is just amazing. And so I feel like if I check out more of her work, I'll definitely find something that suits me a little bit more. But overall, this has been a success so far, and I'm excited to continue. And actually tomorrow I'm going to be traveling, and I was thinking of what book to bring with me. Normally when I travel, I don't really read a lot. I'm just like focused on seeing places and visiting places, so I'm not really focused on reading. But sometimes on trains or in the plane, I do have some time that I can use for reading, and I honestly never do. So I think I'm gonna bring a book with me, and I feel like poetry is the way to go because it's quick, and also I can stop pretty much whenever I want. And I'm going to be bringing Magical Negro with me on my little trip, and then I'm gonna leave Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit as the last poetry book that I try. But I'm going to be reading Magical Negro by Morgan Parker, and I'm really excited. I'm maybe going to start right now and then continue on the plane tomorrow, and yeah, then I'll tell you all of my thoughts on this book. A couple of days after my trip, and I finished reading Magical Negro by Morgan Parker there on the plane, on the train. I read a few poems. I do gotta say that I picked 4 poetry books, obviously, to kind of like compare them, and I tried to get different type of poetry books, but I wasn't expecting them to be so different, and for the books to elicit such different I guess emotions and experiences. And with Magical Negro, I think I'm also going to give it a 4-star, which is just weird because I keep giving 4 stars to all poetry books, but I feel like I'm not getting like a new favorite. I feel like no book so far has made me like love pretty much all of the poems. I feel like it's always kind of like going up and down with like a poetry that I really like and then another poem that I don't like so much. That's why I always end up giving it a 4-star, but like I said, it's interesting because the things that I liked in the other books maybe I didn't like so much in this one. And what I specifically loved about this one is that it's a completely different experience, especially from the last one that I read, which was Felicity by Mary Oliver, because those poems are all about like nature and love and simplicity and just like, it's very soft, I guess. It's a very soft poetry book, which sometimes is what you need, but in this poetry collection specifically, I feel like it's very, like the poems are very harsh. I think the themes discussed in this poetry collection obviously demand a different type of approach to poetry and a more like harsher and more violent approach in the way that it's written and what it's talking about. But I felt like in some poems it definitely worked a little bit more than others, so I tabbed a couple of them. Some poems that I tabbed in this collection include Whites Only, then also Who Were Frederick Douglass's Cousins and Other Quotidian Black History Facts That I Wish I Learned in School. This one I really like. I think I'm gonna read it to you next. Then I also really liked especially the second part of this poem, which is A Brief History of the Present. Then I also really liked If You Were Overstaying Woke, which is a really beautiful one, and also The Black Saint and the Sinner Lady and The Dead and the Truth, also another great one. But I think I'm gonna read to you the one about school. So this is Who Were Frederick Douglass's Cousins and Other Quotidian Black History Facts That I Wish I Learned in School. I have a body, it sits in a desk. Every day is bitten with new guilt. My teacher can see right through me all the way to Black History Month. It is my fortune to be ashamed and from nowhere. How can I concentrate on photosynthesis when there is a thing called Africa? When my teacher talks about slaves, I become a slave. I know too much. I raise my hand, American flag and family tree. Is it my fault my stomach aches? I wait, I sit at my desk and try to be still. I lie and immediately confess. I grow plants in a paper towel. I get in trouble for talking. At recess, I pretend. The mountains are closing in. I am good but curious. What happened to the Indians? How do we know about heaven and dragonflies? Where did Harriet Tubman sleep? Who did Harriet Tubman kiss? What about the Africans that stayed? Why are they hungry? Did Frederick Douglass's mother brush his hair in the morning? Was he tender-headed and afraid? Is this how I am supposed to feel? Are you sure? How do you know? I really like this one. I think it's very beautiful. I love the way it flows just all throughout the poem. The structure, I think it flows very nicely and it's not super obvious, I guess, the way that the poem is structured. That also really happens with If You Are Overstaying Woke, which I also really like. I think the structure is very not obvious, but it flows really well. So yeah, this was a great poetry collection. It's not like a new favorite. And in this little poetry vlog experiment, I'm definitely not looking for a new favorite poetry collection. Obviously, if that happened, that would be great, but I'm just looking for like, what type of poetry do I like and do I like poetry? I feel like I do like poetry because there were a lot of poems so far in the 3 books that I read that I really, like, they really made me feel something. So that is obviously the intent of poetry and of literature in general, but like poetry is definitely for the feelings and for the soft people, I guess. And I'm a Pisces, so I am definitely in my feels, especially during Pisces season. And yeah, I'm obviously liking a lot of poems. I don't have a 5-star, but that's not the main intent, I guess, of this vlog. But yeah, now moving on, let me put this back on the shelf. And now moving on, I'm going to be reading the last poetry collection, Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit by Jan Campbell. And this is definitely, I think, the shortest one. It's only 62 pages or 61 pages, so this is definitely going to be a quick read. I think I'm going to read it right now and I'll probably tell you my thoughts afterwards, but this one definitely focuses a lot on being disabled, which I think is just such an interesting topic, and one that I don't really read a lot about, and I should read more about. And I found it interesting that there was a poetry collection about it, so definitely interested. And also I think it involves a lot of, like I said before, a lot about folklore and circuses and like fairies and all of that, so it's definitely going to be interesting. So let's give it a go. I'm wearing the same sweatshirt that I was wearing in my last vlog clip, but this is actually a whole different day, and I am here to kind of round out this vlog because I've been dragging this vlog for weeks now. And anyway, last time I spoke to you, I said I was going to read this book, and I actually read it probably in one sitting because this is such a short poetry collection, and I honestly gotta say that I was expecting a little bit more. Maybe it was the length of the poetry collection that also didn't help, because just as I was getting into the poetry style and everything, it just ended because it was just 60 something pages, so it was very quick, and I kind of wish it was longer. But even though it's short, I feel like I was expecting to like the poetry a little bit more. There were definitely poems that I liked more than others. It's kind of like the same experience that I've had with all of these books. There are obviously always poems that resonate more with me than others, but I don't know, I just felt like I had to reread a lot of the poems to actually kind of understand them. But the poems that I dog-eared the page were The Body Festival, and also Technical Rehearsal, and Fell. Also, the second part of The Hospital Is Not Big Enough for the Two of Us, and also Trying to Gain Entry into the Republic of Motherhood. Those were definitely standouts for me, and I think I will read to you The Body Festival because it is a short one, and I really did like this one, and also I think it encompasses the book really well. So The Body Festival. The carnival is here, you eat it up like candy floss. In the fairground, apples are sticking to the grasses, and lasses are in the body tank, expanding and or drowning. Fireworks plated into strawberry hair. Your bodies have eyes, the color of gills. The ground is littered with misplaced feet. Our hearts are rubies in the trees. The dead are walking, fishing. They are coming up for air. And I definitely did like the scenery that this poem kind of shows and illustrates. It's very gory, but it's also very like whimsical because it's talking about a carnival, like a fair. So I really like that contrast of like something really fun and beautiful, and also like body horror and just like weird things happening. So that was definitely interesting. In the end, I think this was probably my least favorite out of the 4 books that I read in this little vlog. And I don't know if it was the length of the poetry collection, I don't know, it was just very short for me. And I knew going into this that the author is disabled, and it talks a lot about that in the poetry collection. But I wasn't expecting this to talk a lot about motherhood as a disabled person, which I really enjoyed, and a lot of the poems that I liked in this collection were about that, especially the last ones that I mentioned. The hospital is not big enough for the two of us, and also Trying to Gain Entry into the Republic of Motherhood. Those two I really did like. And that concludes my little poetry experiment. And it's interesting because I feel like I took different things from all of these books. I feel like they were very different from one another, and yeah, I liked different things from each of the books. This one, I think the thing that stands out to me is the writing. The writing in this is amazing, and I think Ada Limon has really a way with words. And then for Felicity, I definitely like the themes of this. I think it's a very, I don't know, like a classic poetry book. When you think of a poetry book, you think of this, of like themes of love and nature and just like very whimsical. I also like the writing. Obviously, I'm not saying that I didn't like the other book's writing, but this one just stands out to me a lot more. But in this one, I think I like the themes because they're, like I said, they're very classic poetry themes, and I do love things about love and nature. Like, I'm just a sucker for it. Since Mary Oliver has such an extensive body of work, I'm definitely gonna check out more of her poetry collections. Now, for Magical Negro, my favorite thing about it was definitely the themes in this and how raw it was. It was just very abrupt and very in your face, and it really made you almost uncomfortable to read this, and I think I said that in my review, but I did like that. I felt like it was very different from the first two that I read, which were just more like I said, classic poetry. Even Bright Dead Things has a lot of like classic themes of poetry in it. I think this collection is not trying to make itself agreeable, and I like that because it was definitely a contrast from the other books. And for Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit, I definitely did like the themes as well, but in just a different scope. I definitely liked the, I guess, comparison between being disabled and like circuses and folklore. I thought that was a really interesting comparison to make. So that was my experience reading poetry during the month of February, and it was definitely an interesting experience, and it really makes me want to explore more poetry, because this was definitely a very interesting experience just in the way that I picked very different poetry collections, and I definitely can pinpoint the things, like I said, that I did like about these books. So I want to find more books with these things that I liked, and hopefully find more authors to check out as well. Yeah, very interesting little thing that I did here. Maybe I'll do a part 2 one day of just more poetry books once I feel like I know a little bit more about poetry, because right now I still feel like I'm very early on in my poetry journey, I guess. Also, before I go, I just wanted to say that I obviously haven't posted videos in a while because February was absolutely crazy. First of all, I got a new job, and it was really hard to just like adjust to a new routine and new people, and just like a new job in general is always very daunting. And also in February I got engaged, and I've been planning a wedding for the past few weeks. I still have a lot of things to plan, obviously, and also a lot of time to plan because it's only for next year. But still, it's a lot, and it's been consuming a lot of my life, and that's why I haven't been making videos, editing videos, and also I haven't been reading a lot. But hopefully I can start to get a little bit more organized, and I can start making more content for you guys, because I definitely miss it. And yeah, I guess that concludes this little vlog, and I will see you on my next one. Bye!